Imagine this. You're in a high-stakes corporate meeting. The future of a billion-dollar deal hangs by a thread, and suddenly, the person who saves the day isn't an executive or a consultant. It's the janitor's daughter. How did she do it? In just seconds, she solved a $900 million crisis that had baffled the best minds in the room. Stick around to find out how a fresh perspective changed everything. And hey, before we dive into the story, please subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost you much, but your one touch is incredibly valuable to us. In the blink of an eye, a billion-dollar empire was on the verge of collapse. The corporate world had been buzzing with excitement about a monumental deal. The company's crown jewel, a contract worth a staggering $900 million. This deal was the key to solidifying the company's dominance in the market. With this agreement, the company would not only secure massive profits, but also elevate its status among industry giants. It seemed like a win-win situation, one that everyone had been eagerly awaiting. But as the days went on, it became clear that something was terribly wrong. The excitement quickly turned to panic as the deal hit an unexpected snag. What was supposed to be a straightforward, lucrative transaction had become a tangled mess of mistakes and missed opportunities. Weeks of relentless meetings, urgent phone calls, and endless back-and-forth negotiations yielded no results. The company's brightest minds, top executives, financial analysts, and even high-priced consultants, were all stumped. No one could find a root cause of the issue, and every attempt to fix the problem seemed to make it worse. This wasn't a small oversight. The error at the heart of the deal was massive, so critical that it could potentially derail the entire transaction. The $900 million deal was in jeopardy, and so was the company's reputation. With each passing hour, the stakes grew higher. The company's future was on the line, and the pressure was mounting on the executive team to find a solution, any solution. As time ticked away, the pressure inside the boardroom became unbearable. Executives and consultants scrambled for answers, but nothing seemed to work. There were countless theories, dozens of strategies, and endless discussions, but the problem persisted. The team was running out of time, and the company's top brass was beginning to lose hope. It felt like they were stuck in a never-ending loop of failure, unable to break free from the crisis, threatening to swallow everything they had built. In that moment, it seemed as if the company's future hung by a thread, and no one knew how to save it. While the executives stressed, someone else was quietly watching, and she saw something they missed. Amid the intense back-and-forth inside the high-stakes meeting room, there was one person who hadn't been acknowledged by the corporate elite: Jason's daughter, Maya. She wasn't part of the team. In fact, she had no formal job title. Maya was the daughter of Jason, the building's janitor, who had worked there for years. She had spent plenty of time in the office, cleaning floors and running small errands for the team, but never once had anyone considered her opinion when it came to business strategies. Maya's daily routine was far removed from the high-powered discussions that dominated the conference room. She wasn't involved in the endless meetings or the stress of trying to save the company's biggest deal. She wasn't a part of the corporate drama, and that was exactly what made her different. As the executives worked themselves into a frenzy, desperate to find a solution, Maya walked quietly through the office, observing the chaos from the outside. What the executives couldn't see was that Maya, an outsider, had a unique perspective. While the corporate world was focused on endless spreadsheets, complex financial models, and big-picture strategies, Maya wasn't bogged down by all the jargon. She wasn't caught up in the pressure of the moment, which allowed her to approach the problem with a calm and clear mind. As the meeting raged on, with the consultants suggesting more complicated and expensive solutions, Maya's keen eye began to notice something the others had overlooked: a simple yet crucial pattern in the data that everyone had dismissed. It wasn't about the financials or the projections. It was the smallest detail, something buried in the data that no one had thought to check. The moment she spotted the error, Maya's mind clicked. She knew exactly what needed to be done. The room was filled with tension and frustration, but Maya, unburdened by the complexities of corporate expectations, raised her hand. "Excuse me," she said calmly, cutting through the noise. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at her, surprised to see someone who hadn't spoken up until that moment. Maya's simple observation would soon turn everything around. While the rest of the team scrambled for answers, Maya had already solved the problem they'd been struggling with for weeks. Maya's quiet voice pierced through the noise. She had been sitting quietly in the back of the room, unnoticed by the high-powered executives as they engaged in heated discussions. The room was filled with stress and urgency, but Maya remained calm, observing everything from her seat. She wasn't part of the high-level team, and she had no formal expertise in finance or business strategy. But Maya had always been a curious observer, someone who asked questions and paid attention to the small details that others missed. As the conversation grew more frantic, with ideas and strategies being thrown around with no resolution, Maya's patience finally wore thin. She had been quietly absorbing everything said, watching the data unfold on the screen, when she realized that something crucial had been overlooked. In a room full of financial analysts, business consultants, and executives, Maya had noticed a simple pattern, one that no one else had caught. With a composed demeanor, she raised her hand. The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward her, some with curiosity, others with disbelief. Maya wasn't part of the corporate team. No one expected her to speak up, let alone offer a solution to a problem that had stumped the best minds in the company. The CEO, already losing hope and frustrated with the lack of progress, looked at Maya with a raised eyebrow. "Yes, Maya?" he asked, his voice filled with skepticism. Maya met his gaze with a quiet confidence. "I've been looking at the data differently," she began, her voice calm yet assertive. "There's an error in the transfer of one critical piece of information, a small detail that's been overlooked." The room seemed to pause for a moment, as everyone processed what she was saying. Maya, with a focused gaze, explained that she had noticed a glitch in the system, an overlooked error that had cascaded into the problem they were now facing. This wasn't a flaw in the financial models or the numbers. It was a simple mistake in the data transfer, something that could easily be missed if you weren't paying attention to the finer points. The executives were deep into debates about complex models, financial projections, and strategies that required multiple steps and high-level expertise. But Maya had seen the issue from a different perspective. While everyone was focused on big-picture strategies and complex solutions, Maya's mind had zeroed in on something small, something overlooked. Her eyes remained fixed on the CEO as she calmly outlined the solution. A simple correction in the way the data had been transferred. It was straightforward, almost too simple for anyone to have noticed amidst the chaos. But Maya's keen observation would fix everything. The room fell silent as the CEO processed what Maya had just suggested. It was a solution they had been desperately searching for, one that didn't require complicated new strategies or external consultations. It was a fresh perspective, the kind that only someone like Maya, unburdened by the weight of corporate expectations, could provide. In disbelief, the CEO listened closely, realizing this might be the solution they had been desperately searching for. As the room fell silent, the weight of Maya's words hung in the air. The CEO, usually composed and decisive, was taken aback. He had spent weeks trying to solve this crisis, pulling in experts, consultants, and every resource available. Yet here was Maya, a young girl with no formal business education or executive experience, offering a solution that none of them had considered. How had she figured it out? The question lingered in his mind, but as he looked closer at the data Maya had pointed out, the answer became clear. The mistake had been staring them in the face the whole time. It wasn't a complicated error. It was a simple flaw in the data transfer process that had caused the entire issue. For weeks, they had been focusing on the wrong aspects of the problem, overwhelmed by complex financial models and projections. But Maya, unburdened by those distractions, had spotted the one thing that could fix everything. The CEO sat back in his chair, a mix of surprise and admiration on his face. This was exactly what they needed, a fresh perspective, unclouded by the corporate noise. "Can you walk us through how this would work?" he asked, his voice filled with both curiosity and respect. Maya smiled, grateful for the opportunity to explain. She calmly took the team through her solution, showing them how the data transfer had been mishandled and how a simple adjustment could resolve the issue. Her explanation was clear and straightforward, with no frills or complicated jargon. What Maya was offering wasn't just a quick fix. It was a solution that could not only save the $900 million deal, but also restore the company's credibility in the eyes of its clients. As she spoke, the executives quickly grasped the brilliance of her suggestion. It wasn't just practical, it was genius in its simplicity. They immediately sprang into action, delegating tasks and mobilizing the team to implement her solution. Within minutes, the fix was in place and the crisis was averted. The CEO looked around at his team, his expression shifting from disbelief to relief. The $900 million deal had been saved, and the company's future was secure. The executives exchanged glances, their earlier tension now replaced with gratitude and a sense of awe. What had seemed like an insurmountable challenge was now behind them, all thanks to Maya's keen eye and simple yet effective solution. The room, once filled with chaos, now buzzed with a quiet sense of accomplishment. And in that moment, everyone knew that the future of the company had been secured not by the most experienced, but by the most observant. Sometimes, the person with the least formal training can make the most incredible impact. As the meeting concluded, the tension in the room finally began to dissipate. What had started as a crisis, an almost catastrophic failure, had turned into an unexpected victory, and it was all thanks to Maya. The room erupted into applause, a sound of disbelief mixed with deep appreciation. The team had gone from the brink of disaster to a renewed sense of hope, and everyone knew who to thank. The CEO, still processing the magnitude of what had just happened, turned to Maya with a look of admiration. He had seen many things in his years as a leader, but he had never expected someone with no formal business background to save the day in such a spectacular fashion. "You've just saved this company from disaster," he said, his voice filled with awe. "Thank you." Maya stood there, humbly accepting the gratitude, but inside, she was still processing the enormity of what had transpired. She had never set out to make a huge impact. She had simply noticed something others hadn't. And that small observation had been the key to fixing the $900 million problem that no one else had been able to solve. The solution was simple, but it had required the kind of fresh perspective that Maya had. The once overlooked janitor's daughter had done what the highest paid experts, financial analysts, and corporate strategists could not. She had not only solved a $900 million problem, but had also proven a valuable lesson for everyone in that room. Titles and formal education don't always matter. Sometimes, the most valuable insights come from those who are free from the pressures of business jargon, bureaucracy, and the weight of corporate expectation. Maya had done what others couldn't because she wasn't bogged down by the complexities of the situation. She simply looked at the problem with fresh eyes, untainted by the noise that surrounded it. Recognizing her brilliance, the CEO turned to Maya with a smile. "I want to offer you a permanent role as a consultant," he said. "You've demonstrated a perspective that we could all learn from." Maya's heart raced at the offer, but she couldn't help but feel proud of what she had accomplished, not just for herself, but for her father, Jason, who had always encouraged her to look at the world in her own way. From that moment on, Maya's story spread through the office like wildfire. The tale of how a cleaner's daughter saved a $900 million deal became legendary. It reminded everyone that sometimes the most profound contributions come from those who aren't tied to the typical corporate hierarchy. Maya had proven that fresh perspectives, even from the most unexpected sources, could change everything. No one in that room would ever underestimate the value of an outsider's viewpoint again. The key lesson from this story is that fresh perspectives and curiosity often lead to the most innovative solutions, even in the most challenging situations. Maya, with no formal business training, was able to solve a $900 million problem because she wasn't bogged down by conventional thinking or expectations. This reminds us that valuable insights can come from anyone, regardless of their background or title. It's important to recognize that sometimes the most profound solutions come from those who see things differently. So, never underestimate the power of observation and innovation that arises from thinking outside the box. This story teaches us that everyone has something valuable to contribute, and by embracing diverse viewpoints, we can unlock the answers we need to overcome even the toughest challenges. If you enjoyed this story and want more incredible tales of inspiration and success, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what lessons you learned from today's story. Thanks for watching.